As I jump off my mind's cliff into subconscious depths, knowing my higher and knowing my lower self, falling past my thoughts that got me in trouble. Realizing ego is a burstable bubble. Falling backwards seems like there's no end or bottom. Cut out the good, I see no thoughts rotten. No modern European's mentality, all Asiatic. The scent of this fall, aromatic. Tea tree oil and frankincense so intense. Demons beaten from outside make no indents. Plus no entrance without the mastermind key. Thoughts of Allah wasn't a lie, but actually me, divine being, a national, actual, factual, more a scientist, seeing things mathematical. Law is length, angle, and width. With mind strength, mangle a Sith. When devil's horse burning, sulfur a whiff. Lower self, third eyes crushed, that's the weed in my split. From these lows, the only way to uplift. 40 days and 40 nights working the graveyard shift. Battling zombies, which are my own that exist. Playing my emotions as string strum or Congo drums. Seeing things and hearing sounds, no fear around. Looking down, not seeing the ground, but feeling my crown. Pulsating so profound, soul unbound. Inhale for 7, hold for 4. Exhale for 7, hold for 4. Double door 11, walk through the gateway frame of eternal flames. No burns, no regard, unreal as unreal, no blame. My pure freedom and bliss, demigod trying to contain. On my journey of learning fear, embracing pain. Since love heals on the path of living cognizance, patience is a virtue. I'd rather take the long distance. Aware mental clearness, mind's tailless with fierceness. Harlot seduced to get me locks and beardless. Electromagnetic helix, induce the voltage. Begging ancestors to increase the dosage. Produce a strong field, rubbing together shaman stone balls, releasing the stress. Calling Orishas, decreasing my breath. But are you really breathing? Knowing or believing? I master fruition and receiving from birthright retrieving. Are you in trance without doing a ritual dance? Paralysis, magic, reversal on the square stance. Harmonic lyrical mudra from Islam Sutra. Elevate thoughts, wake up your inner Sibyls and Buddhas. Master your will, not desires. Awaken Kundalini fires. True spoken to MCs higher. Medusa, you liars. Bagging heads and horns and tails for mystic functions. Ritualistic. Perched at the junction where demons go to and fro, dressed as the sheeple, selling them rights, civil and pseudo rights equal. Blood flowing past a horse brow, didn't circle your passion. Celestial thread of my ancestors, tailored my fashions. Fooling people with their words and people not watching their actions. Ignorance of law is no excuse when something happens. Feeling eyes and reading postures, moving bionic. Monsanto seeds, turn you psychopharmaceutical chronic. Got their eyes bloody, blood muddy for blood money. They gave me nothing, so can't take nothing from me. I love the quote, you will respect but don't have to love me. They gave me nothing, so can't take nothing from me.
We got rituals for damn near anything you want to do, and we can give them to you tonight.
Hey. Chris V. Still get it from the intellect reservoir. Cosmic surfing, these two sons of God didn't come from virgins. Ether makes up these gods. We rode light angles to the earth plane. plane. Again trapped in skin, but a different name. Monads, been here since Ruth and Moabs. Thought you killed me when Drew and Marcus got toe tagged. That's why I'm here with the Grand Chairman of Fear. Truth make you think critical like Sabir. Doing the God things, I make ancients appear. And all I'm hearing is knocking while I'm watching a seer. Ancient rituals and sound healing notes through Pro Tools. Eye to eye transfers knowledge, you need no schools. Waking up the masses, music is class's stage. Most fail cause they look like the flying shades. Following demons possess Kanye's and Lil Wayne's. Expecting a hippie with a cross and a Greek name. In a melanin cause need D&B to link up with no cheese. Orisha's in me, I'm not what you don't see. I'm not one of those armchair revolutionaries. Allah's in me, sick and tired of being sick and tired. But that's just where we get our strength, man. The Christ is in me. I'm not a hustler, pimp, gangster, wankster, but trust me, they all in me.
I got it when the moon shifted the tomb in the melanated womb. Sipping milk in the honey, doing triple black, boom. Touchdown, traveling on planet Earth where we crush clowns. While I'm managing this curse and preparing the elixir that turns copycats into kitty litter. These poor pussies pretending to be misters. I cannot sin, but I can be very sinister. My limitations are limited as I do a lap around the galaxy. Had to gather light and rally back and fuck the fallacy. And cause of that, I got labeled the antagonist. And it didn't help that I cuss and bun cannabis and bun candles and wear symbols of Orishas. And I put a hex on the heads of 7 preachers with one trailer spit aimed at the pulpit. Cross the crucifix, a whole tabernacle backflip. I'm not Catholic, but if I choose my bare resonance, you may just catch a glimpse of Lucifer's semblance. Up and down Jacob's ladder with my melanin, the vessel of no fear none. You can find the devil in.
God's in me, I say that so serious. Turn a nigga to a god, show you I'm serious. Got him proclaiming, name changing and facing with no guilt or fear. All these clansmen masons, we stand on squares, circumscribe our own circumference. Goddess Lakshmi bless me with abundance of prosperity. I speak with clarity, not to confuse. Put Moorish in front everything from Christian to Jews. I'm the anchor, so I don't listen to news on some snail type vibrations making me snooze. Calling a Parker to call down our UFO crews. Like Yahweh or Dogon shamans, we call on Ra Amen. For sun ritual, spiritual, I'm physically trapped. Rewind, play back, and get your pioneer tap like Gregory Hines when I'm spitting the rhymes. A&Rs want me to blow, but all rights reserved when we sign. In a melanin cause me D&B to link up with no cheese. Orisha's in me, I'm not what you don't see. I'm not one of those armchair revolutionaries. Allah's in me, sick and tired of being sick and tired. But that's just where we get our strength, man. The Christ is in me, I'm not a hustler, pimp, gangster, wankster, but trust me, they all in me.
Alright, so let's pour the libations. Omagumu, Olensu, Shumala, Okija, Chieka, Cheoa, Alcala, Locayo, Kakongo, Lalila. I need some Lara shades. Issa, Manu, Noku, Mana, Imatu, Tupi, Juba, Jova, Eglati, Kasimbo, Nizala, Isala, Avilu, Pazuzu, Lupa, Numeresh, Aloria, Ayo, Emerald, Grandma, Notoyo, Olu, Nephew, Yuzu, Yahalo,
Sounds like it's having a hallucinogenic effect. Not like a drug, which is harmful and wrong, and just say no, kids. But spacey nonetheless.
Have you ever heard or thought that you saw or felt the pain from third eye to your jaw? Felt schizo, brain circuits trip so. Got me seeing strobe lights like a disco. Under skin crawls, seeing one state shapes out of the norm. Demonic forms takes. Forces external, stress is extreme. Eyes wide open, So it's a dream, it seems, sort of like alienation. Surrounded by aliens at a PlayStation. Nerd impulses, feeling pulses on noses. Suffering from tripped out psychosis. Doses, seeing clouds drip like E.T. Sun rays touch fingertips. Reflect kiss off your cheek like lips. Repeating like skips. Peeling the air in strips. Pattern swirl, walls seem to breathe. Mixed up senses that I can't perceive. All I see is sounds, I'm hearing what smells. I'm craving hallucinations like hell. Enter the realm where there's talking gazelles. Speaking metaphysic, I'm feeling depressed. Fez wearing horn note puts his hand on my chest and says, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out. All I did was have a piece of a shroom. My mind going zoom as I spin with this room. Forks run with spoons, knives guilty for murders they committed. Should I be committed to a mental ward? Straight jacket fitted. Frog walks out the wall talking ribbit. I'm overstanding every word said in my head. Then here comes death, smelling like dead. Telling me to follow him flying on fog. On his death log he checks off guard. Looking into his hood, darkness all I see. And darkness is all around me. Like asked me to take a west sound beat. Then introduced me to speed of thought. And she told me by being told man knows not. Carrying on, swinging like Barry Bonds. The flower bouquet from whence he married yawns. Rapper's frost was a corpse. Power and force, divorced of course. Power is an illusion, took the bigger loss. My last 4 blinks felt like ice rinks. Came to my senses looking down sinks. After that I didn't know what to think. So I just put the rest of shrooms into my drink. Breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out, breathe in, breathe in, breathe out, breathe out. The trip is a trip.
Equipped with advanced features and technology like the heated steering wheel, the Kia Sportage is always ready to take care of you. Secure your Kia Sportage today.
Kia, movement that inspires.
The shadow box, the shadow box. You closed-minded, then you boxed in. The shadow box, the shadow box. Perfect your craft, become a marksman.
Levitate, this hoverboard rap. Thank me now, you're welcome like a floor mat. Beat my format, tarot deck, I sort that. Pulled the magician, now you see my forecast. Royal Palace in the crystal ball. I'm a fully spitting bullets, that's John Wall. We dialing up classics in this own call. How you bounce back after the fall? That's a question. We building, not finessing. You got complaints or suggestions. Decided law is my reference. Y'all decorate. The essence is my preference. No hesitation with the demonstration. On my back is where you find the nation. No hesitation with the demonstration. On my back is where you find a nation. Shadow boxing, the shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman. Shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman.
Step into this ring, the gods of war sing. Drum steady pounding to the bloodstream coursing. Heed their warning just before the sword flings. Move north 4 degrees, avoiding its sting. Listen to their voices, sight unseen. Quiet all the noises, focus on just being. I am one with the breeze that eases through the trees. I am one with the earth underneath your feet. I am water walking land in the form of man, the king of Siam. I am that I am. I'm that fire that's burning deep inside your heart. The synchronized senses moving your body parts smoothly with fluidness, highly intuitive. Knew the movements of your fists before you even did. With each step left, right, feeling oddly compelled, because the shadow box with God is to spar with the self.
Shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman. Shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman.
Recognize your dark aspects, I don't mean skin tone. Outside truths in the house, demons you bring home. Outside clothes on your bed, sleep with a night hat. Paralysis when you sleep, dreams every night bad. Subconsciously suppressed aspects, acts called jump. About negative behaviors, unravel is done. See the deepest trauma and guilt you push away. Causes depression, addiction, and anger you display. Identity is central to the practice of magic. Witchcraft help you rewrite and conquer your habits. Detrimental to the growth, exploring the shadow self of man. Learn the lesser banish with pentagrams. Get a black candle, a pen or a pin. Scratch shadow emotions and let the healing begin. Light it and meditate, burn it down to the end. It's locked in. This is what we call shadow boxing.
Shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman. Shadow boxing. You close-minded, then you boxed in. This shadow boxing. Perfect your craft, become a marksman.
Peace to all the Moors worldwide. Honors to you for being here for our second episode of Q&A Wednesdays. And I've been taking in this book over the past few months. I'm taking in this book, listening to some of the audio meditation, and stuff's actually working. So we said we might as well get the brother on here so he can talk about the book and talk about some other stuff and see where this goes. Brother Mo.
How you doing, brother?
Yeah, everything's good, fam. How you doing?
I'm good. All is well. Thanks for having me here. Oh yes, thanks for having me here.
No problem. Mm-hmm. We could start up. We'll go through some stuff. I got some stuff highlighted in the book, and then we'll open up for any questions, and we'll see where this goes. But if you could start up with the awakening, the 2008 awakening that got you to be where you're at right now.
Yeah, that happened. That started in 2008. Prior to that, we used to meet up all the time. We used to meet up. We were doing sessions at Lester B. Pearson. Remember those?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were doing sessions. During that time, I was meditating. Still am. I was meditating with another program before I created the one that I will be introducing and announcing. That's based on the book. And I was dabbling into metaphysics and Eastern philosophy during that time period. And we used to meet up on a regular basis. And there was a lot of DVDs that you guys used to pass on to me. And the ones that I gravitated to more were the metaphysical ones, especially with oh gosh, what was his name again?
Is that Kalindi?
No. He was one of them, but there was one that really stuck, Aline Bay.
Oh yeah, all right, yeah.
Yeah, the stuff from Aline Bay I really gravitated to the stuff and the information that I got from Dr. Pukram and Dr. Layla Africa and oh gosh, and Dr. Shebi. So there was a number of people that grabbed my attention during that time, and that allowed me to focus on the metaphysical side of things, and a lot of amazing things took place during that time period. So when we came around 2008, this is after 5 years of doing brainwave entrainment meditation, something miraculous happened, and it was so profound and so sublime.
Pardon the interjection. For people who don't know, you could quickly just talk on the brainwave.
What brainwave is? Oh yes, brainwave entrainment.
Yeah.
So just to give everyone a little bit of an idea of what that is. Something happens in the brain when people meditate. So when people do traditional meditation, what happens is when someone's focusing on a mantra, so like a spoken word, a sentence of some sort, or staring at a candle flame, or focusing on an image in their mind, the two hemispheres of the brain starts to synchronize. So years ago, it was probably about 100 years ago, someone figured out that it was actually longer than that, but someone figured out that you can entrain the two hemispheres of the brain by something that's called entrainment. So at that time, they probably didn't know that something would happen in the brain, but they realized that certain things would happen in regards to synchronicity. So in the 70s, there was an expert who came up with who wrote a paper about binaural beats. So binaural beats is a form of entrainment where if you take basically two sounds, and you play one sound in one ear, and you play another sound that's slightly different in the other ear, your brain activity will start to resonate to the frequency that it's listening to. So it will take the difference of those two frequencies and it will create its own frequency, which is a beat frequency within the center of your brain. And that frequency will entrain the two hemispheres of your brain. So if you're listening to two pitch frequencies that creates a frequency of, say, 7 hertz, your brain waves will start to resonate to 7 hertz. So sometime later, people realized that this mimicked the same type of experience within advanced meditators. And this became a big thing in the 70s. And then that kind of died off. But then when the internet became a thing in the 90s, it started to pick up again. And people started to explore these binaural beats because then it was accessible online and things of that sort. So people started playing around with these brainwaves and realized that you can entrain the brain in the alpha state. And what I'm naming here is the Greek alphabet, of course, which doesn't really belong to the Greeks anyway. But they're the ones who popularized that in the Western hemisphere in regards to the alphabets. So we name our brainwaves after the alphabet. So we have the alpha brainwave. Well, first you have beta, but the reason why alpha comes first is because the person who discovered the brainwaves didn't know about that there were faster brainwaves. So the first brainwaves this person named was alpha, and then it was beta, and then he named alpha, which is actually supposed to be A in the alphabet, but it went backwards. And then he they came up with theta and delta, and so on and so on and so on. So you can entrain your brain by changing the frequency of your brain to match the same frequency as meditation. The thing that makes it even better is that you can stay consistent in those brainwaves, in those meditative brainwaves, which if you stayed with us for a period of time, it can speed up your meditation process, as opposed to someone who has to do a traditional meditation method, which will take you about 5 or 6 years to master. But with brainwave entrainment, you can do this right away. And within time, you can train your brain to entrain in these brainwave states, which will mimic advanced meditation. Within the alpha brainwave, theta, delta, epsilon, and there's even lower ones below that, and there's higher ones above alpha. So there's beta, but beta is not a meditative state. So beta is like an alert, awake state. So right now, most people are in a beta state while they're awake and doing their chores. going to work. But above beta, there's gamma, and then there's hyper gamma, and then there's lambda. And there may be other brainwaves higher than that, but we don't have any EEG devices that pick up anything higher than lambda. Lambda is about 100 to 200 hertz per second. So we don't know of the other brainwaves above that, but I believe that there are faster brainwaves beyond that, because there's lower ones lower than epsilon and so on. So yeah, so that's the basic of a binaural beat brainwave entrainment. So I was experimenting and using these things every single day, even up to this very day. So I've been doing this for over 20 years now. I haven't missed a day in 20 years, in over 20 years. So this is something that I do every single day, where I put on a program which I created, which is called Yinergy, and I play this every day while I do traditional meditation. But you don't have to do that. But I do this with traditional meditation, with chanting and things of that sort. And I do this for an hour every single day. And it has different levels. So there's 13 levels, and each level gets more powerful throughout. So it would probably take a person about 13, 14 years to get through the whole entire program. But it gets deeper and deeper every time you change from one level to another. It gets stronger. The amplitude gets stronger, or I should say the amplitude gets higher, which means more powerful, more strength, and so on. So in 2008, after doing this form of meditation, and also at that time I was experimenting with entheogens, with psychedelics. So even after doing my meditation every single day, once in a while, I would take a psychedelic. In this case, it was psilocybin to enhance the experience. So my goal was to experience, if I could experience stream entry, which would be what people call, which people would call, in my case, I would call Teriatita. Teriatita means fourth. So that's the fourth state of consciousness. So just to give everyone a rundown what I mean by the states of consciousness. So you have your waking state. So that's the first state of consciousness. And then you have your dream state. So that's the second. And then you have your dreamless sleep. That's your third. And then fourth is called Turiya. And then fifth is called Teriatita. So my goal is to get to Teriatita. So in 2008, I reached Turiya. So Turiya is the empty witness state, where you realize that everything is a manifestation of who and what you are, which is the Most High itself. And then after, with years and years of more training, you can reach to the level of Teriatita, which I've done in 2019, December 14th of 2019, where you realize that you are the whole ground of all being. That you are, even though I've already realized that, but you have the actualization that you are absolutely everything within this universe and other universes, everything simultaneously, all at once, past, present, and future. Everything can be revealed to you, and it will stay with you for the rest of your life after that experience, which happened to me in 2019. So that's a rundown of what binaural beats, brainwave entrainment can do. But people have been doing this with traditional meditation for thousands of years. Just people in the modern day ages have found a faster way of doing that. But even though I say faster, it doesn't mean it's easier. This has been the most challenging feat of my entire life. I'll let everyone know that right now. So this is not a quick fix or a way to reach enlightenment very quickly. It's very challenging. It's emotionally, mentally, and spiritually painful at times, but it was well worth it. And so I was able to accomplish all of that, and was able to attain what is known as I said, Teriatita, but it has other names too, like Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and the list goes on with all the different names. Bodhi is another name. So Bodhi is the name of the book, which I named Bodhi in the Brain, and Bodhi means enlightenment. So that's why the book is called Bodhi in the Brain, which means that I have an algorithm that mimics the algorithm of the entire universe, which is 124875. And if you can find the binaural beats that matches up, that equates to 124875 as an algorithm, you would have created a sound that mimics the yin and yang and everything that is needed to allow the brain and the nervous system to evolve, especially your neuromelanin that's within every cell, every neuron in your brain. All that stuff gets activated, and all the neuromelanin, the melanin that's within all the chakras, all of that stuff gets activated, all of that, so that Kundalini awakening can take place and all that happens. So all of that stuff, in a nutshell, happened to me And I'm still going through it right now. I'm still trying to recover from that phenomenal day. But even though it was so phenomenal, it's also very frightening. But I got through that part. Yeah.
Yeah. Could you speak on, because we even in the Moorish paradigm, we have accepted the fact that you have to go through the gauntlet in order to get to a certain place.
That's right.
Could you talk about what those things are, like from your experience, like, you know, going through these I don't know, trying
times
trying times in order to reach a level that you never reached before?
Very good question. In 2008, after having my first full-blown spiritual awakening, I didn't, even though I went through some negative stuff prior to that, I didn't know what was coming up ahead. I'll tell you that right now. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know what was going to come up ahead. I've read stuff in books and everything like that, but I didn't know what it was going to actually feel like. So you may have heard people refer to something called the dark night of the soul. So the dark night of the soul can be broken down into many different facets, but I'll try to cover a few of them. So in my experience, because even though I had this full-blown attainment in 2019, I had many other types of spiritual awakening types of experiences throughout those years. So altogether, I've had more than 50 of these awakenings, and on top of that, peak experiences. So the spiritual peak experiences, and there's spiritual awakenings. But what I come to realize that there are different types of spiritual awakenings, because it's really difficult for a human being to awaken to absolutely everything, because the psyche is fragile and it can fall apart. So it takes it in doses, if you want to say that. So one of the things that can happen, and it's most likely to happen to most human beings who follow this path or any type of spiritual path, is they'll go through the dark night of the soul. So during my experiences, especially before I break into a spiritual awakening, I go through what you may call a mental hell. So in that mental hell, or that mental turmoil, you experience all human atrocities. So you experience everything from war, nuclear war, assassinations, lynchings, rape, molestation, animal slaughter, earthquakes, tornadoes, or being a victim of an earthquake or a tornado. The list goes on of all the different things. Dying from an eruption from a volcano. All these type of visions happen, and they feel absolutely real until you realize that you're just having a vision of these things that are happening. But the human being, the psyche, is, if you want to break it down to the id. So in psychology, they talk about the id, the ego, and the superego. So what I'm referring to is the stuff that's stuck in the id aspect. So the id is like the impulsive part of yourself, and your ego controls governs the id. So within the id, you have the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind is filled with a lot of unresolved material. So it could be your stuff, like your trauma that you've been carrying around all your life, but it can also be the trauma of your ancestors. So all that trauma that's happened to them, that's also stuck in your unconscious mind. And when you open up Pandora's box, that stuff comes out. So you could be releasing stuff from your ancestors, releasing your own trauma, and also releasing the trauma, which they call the collective unconscious. All that stuff that's trapped within the human collective comes up to the surface, and it will haunt you. So your job is to watch it and to look at it without judgment, and look at it without bias, and allow all that stuff to happen. And if you're able to look at it, witness it without bias and without judgment, it's less, I would say it's less, I don't want to say it's less painful, but it's less, there's less suffering. There's less dukkha, if you want to call it that, when you watch it without judgment and without bias. So you allow all this stuff to happen. If you allow it to happen naturally, what will happen eventually is you'll peak, and you'll hit the peak experience, and you'll experience the absolute opposite of all that suffering. So the opposite of all that suffering, of course, is bliss, which they call Satchitananda. Satchitananda, which means bliss, consciousness, and existence. And then that will occur. And so that will happen. But a lot of people give up too soon before that could ever happen. So they see it as, you know, a dark night of the soul, a bad trip, something negative going wrong, when really it's just patience and having a very high emotional threshold to deal with that mental emotional health, so you can experience Satchitananda. So that's where that comes from. So that's called Dark Night of the Soul. That started to happen to me a few years in after 2008. That started to occur on a regular basis. So I still went to work and did all the things I was supposed to do, and still played it off like everything was cool. But there was a time period where all that stuff was coming up to the surface, and it was frightening. It was challenging, but I got through all that. And there's also, and that's just the mental and the emotional, but there's also the physical. So you may also go through a lot of physical turmoil with the body. So it could be fast pacing of the heart. It could be kidney pains. It could be, the list goes on of all the different things, rashes on the body. All that stuff could occur, and eventually all that stuff goes away. It's all temporary. All that stuff goes away as you're cleaning out what they call cleaning up the nadis. Nadis spelled as Nadis. Nadis. Nadis are like the refined channels that are attached to your chakras, I guess you could say that. They're like the subtle version of your nervous system. And these are filled with a lot of karmic goop. So your job is, through meditation and yoga and in other spiritual practices, is to clear out all that karmic goop out of the nadis. The nadis are so thin, they're thinner than a strand of hair. That's how thin they are. So you can imagine how difficult it can be to remove all that blockage out of each of these nadis. But that's what happens when you start meditating. You release the Kundalini energy, which is at the tailbone of your spine. And when that gets released, that energy has to travel through all your nerves, all your meridians, and all your nadis. So you have your nerves, which are very gross and very apparent, and then you have your meridians, which are more subtle, which they talk about in Chinese medicine, and then you have your nadis, which are even more refined. And all that stuff has to be cleared out so that the Kundalini energy, which is trapped at the tailbone of your spine, gets released, travels through all those channels, bypassing all the chakras, from the root chakra all the way up to the crown chakra. And when it reaches the crown chakra, illumination takes place. So that's where enlightenment, or even just temporary, that can take place once all the chakras are clear. The chakras, the meridians, and the nadis are clear from all that karmic goop. And karmic goop is basically the stuff that you accumulated throughout your lifetimes, or many lifetimes, which they call karma.
That's peace. As you were talking, I remembered something in the book about eunergy and post-traumatic stress.
And post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yeah,
yes.
Just how, especially dealing with, because we had one of the students yesterday committed suicide.
Oh, for real?
One of the students committed suicide. So I wanted you to talk about the whole eunergy program or meditation, and how that can assist with dealing with stress, especially with people on here that might have children. They have this thing, give them pills, give them whatever. Mm-hmm. They have all the devices, you know what I mean? iPad, iPhone, tablet, whatever, and they're bombarded with all these stress causing mediums mm-hmm. around them. How could this assist? And again, not just for the young people, but also for adults to sort of get themselves more in tune with where they're supposed to be going in life.
Well, one of the purpose of eunergy is to raise your mental and your emotional threshold. This is very, very important. If a person's able to raise their emotional and mental threshold, they can handle more that's coming at them. So everything that's happening externally, they'll be able to they'd be able to deal with that a lot easier. So that's one of the purposes of eunergy, is to raise your emotional and mental threshold. the Buddha said all life is suffering. And he wasn't joking when he said that. Even though when he says suffering, he doesn't necessarily mean extreme suffering like going through famine and things of that sort, even though that can also occur during the dark night of the soul. You can actually experience being a human being going through famine, and you can also experience going through all the mental illnesses. I've done all of that stuff I've gone through within short periods of time. But going back to the energy, it's supposed to raise your mental and your emotional threshold. If a person's able to raise that, they're able to withstand the stuff that's coming at them. But of course, everyone's situation is different. Not being a psychologist, I'm not supposed to say choose this meditative practice and combine that with I don't know, with whether with pills or with treatment or anything like that. I'm not necessarily supposed to be saying that, but I know from working with people personally how much Energy or products like Energy are able to raise that threshold. The other part to that, though, is even though a person may want to raise their threshold, it doesn't mean that Energy is going to fix that right away, because we know that through documentation with meditation, all the stuff that meditation can bring up, like things I just mentioned, if you don't have a high enough threshold to deal with the stuff that I just mentioned, certain negative things could occur. So a person has to be very careful in regards to any type of meditative practice, because part of the meditative practice is to bring up a lot of that stuff, to clear it out of the system, which will work. You will clear up the stuff out of the system, but you have to survive it, right? You have to be able to overcome all that, and that takes time. So if a person hasn't raised their threshold, there could be many type of challenges that could occur, which you want to be able to avoid. So as much as Energy can help with those things, you want to do that with an expert, with a practitioner who knows their craft or their practice to help you through that. So I don't want to be here saying take Energy. Energy will fix all that. Energy can help with that, because I've seen it help with certain people, but people are going through different stages of turmoil and suffering. So it's hard to say, but Energy can do a lot of that, especially if you're at a good place where you're able to handle these challenges. But Energy can do a whole lot. I've seen people. Actually, I worked with a guy recently. I told this story because I just did a podcast interview a few days ago, and I was telling the story to the host. But I was working with a guy who just got released from detention, and he was going through some forms of depression. I'm not going to say major depression, but enough to rattle his day. And he was going through this stuff. And so I would meet with him every two weeks for a year, for about 12 months. I would meet with him every 2 weeks. And I was trying to get him to do Energy. So he did do it for the first few sessions that we were having together. And then he came to me and he said, hey, like I hate doing this stuff. I don't like putting on headphones. The sounds that I'm hearing, they're triggering. I just want to sit here and talk for an hour. So I said, okay. So what I did was, I have different versions of Energy. So I have another form of Energy, which is called ultrasonic Energy. And these are frequencies that are above, they're close to 20,000 hertz. And for people who don't know, 20,000 hertz, human beings can't pick that up. Their ears, their hearing, they can't pick up anything over a certain frequency. So 20,000 hertz is too high for the human hearing threshold. So I made a version of Energy where I could play it and people wouldn't even notice that it's being played. So every time I met with him, which was once every 2 weeks, I would play Energy, ultrasonic Energy off my laptop, and we would have our conversation. And I would do this every 2 weeks up till was the last time I saw him. Last time I saw him was in August, because he was released that month. No, last time I saw him was in July, because he was being released in July. So he's now in the transitional house. So the very last time that we met, he told me how everything improved and how all the depression stuff went away. He doesn't even know what happened. He just feels better all of a sudden. All this stuff kind of melted away. And I said to him, you know what I've been doing the whole time? And he said, what? I said, the whole time, every time we met, every time we meet for an hour, I played the Energy off my laptop. And he goes, I didn't hear anything. I said, I know, because it's silent. He looked at me, he got up, and then he gave me a big hug. And he said, thank you. So this is a guy who wasn't even doing it every day. He only just did it once every 2 weeks. and he wasn't even using headphones. I was just playing it off the speakers off my laptop, and it had benefit in his life. So this is how powerful energy can be. But again, it's different for everyone, and I can't, because I'm not an expert in the field of psychology. It's hard for me to say, even if I have the truth, it's hard for me to put that out there because people can come back at you with that type of stuff. But I know personally what I've done with Unity with the clients that I work with, and a lot of the benefits that they have from that in regards to dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome and all that stuff. So it's something that I highly recommend. But again, some people, you have a small percent of people where meditation would be an issue, would be a problem. There's some people that shouldn't meditate because it may actually cause more damage than good. But for most people, it probably would be a good thing.
One of the Moors in the chat asking, are you playing it right now?
I like this person. I'm actually not. But I have done that. I have done that in interviews where I played it in the background. But it's funny that that came up. But I have done that in the past.
And you just spoke about the meditation not working with some people.
Not that it doesn't work. It's just they may not be able to go through a lot of the turmoil that may come up while doing energy, why they will find it to be unsuccessful, is only because they weren't able to see it through. Right. So people who can't get through that piece, that turmoil piece, that could be an issue. But most people can go through those things. There may be a few people where it won't work with, only because there are certain people who can't entrain to a binaural beat. So that's a possibility too. So there's probably a small percentage of people where they can't entrain to a binaural beat. There's actually people I've met that you can give them the strongest psychedelic and they don't trip. So that happens too. So if that's possible, where a person can take a powerful psychedelic like 5-MeO-DMT and not trip, it's also possible that there are people out there who can try to meditate with a binaural beat like energy and nothing will happen. So, but that's probably a rare group of people, but they do exist.
Now, would you say those things are blockages in those individuals, or are they just beyond the realm? Maybe they're higher in their mindset, they don't know, or their energy or something.
Yeah, it's possible. There are some people on the planet that if you gave them, because if you read some of the stuff from Ram Dass, he talks about this, where when he met his master, he met his guru, he gave his guru LSD, and it didn't matter how much LSD his guru took, he didn't trip. So you hear these stories. So that is possible. So there are some people that, because they're on such a higher plane, they can't trip. There are other people, though, it's not necessarily that they're on the higher plane, they just have a really tough ego. And because of that strong ego, the ego is actually stronger than any psychedelic. So if you're not willing to surrender, sorry, my doorbell, someone just ringing my doorbell. If you're not willing to surrender, LSD may not have an effect on you. So just like meditation, if your ego's so tough and you're not willing to surrender, meditation, binaural beats, entrainment, isochronic tones, none of those things will probably work if the person's not willing to surrender. So it could be a number of things. But for some people, there is a small percent of people, I would say probably like, I don't know what the percentage would be, probably like 0.001% of the world's population, that if you gave them a psychedelic or you gave them something like energy, they may be beyond all of that. So that's possible. But most cases, a really tough ego. And if you may have worked with people where their ego is so strong, nothing can penetrate it. And he's like, that person's just a lost cause. You can't even do anything to help them unless they're willing to let go and allow the process to take place.
Let the dead bury the dead.
Yeah, pretty much.
You also spoke in the book about mindful eating, and you brought up because our people like their food flavorful and stuff. You brought up the onions and the garlic and all that stuff. Just going into the importance of the mindful eating, and then the nootropics.
Oh yes. So in mindful eating, very important thing is because especially when you start doing an advanced practice, spiritual practice, this always comes up in the text. your body will start, because remember I mentioned earlier about the turmoil that you can go through physically. Well, the more toxins that you have in your body, the more turmoil you're going to go through if you go through if you have a spiritual practice over time. It may not happen in the beginning. It may take a few years in, but if you're doing something like the energy, that can start to happen in a few months. And so any toxins that you're putting in, so it could be there could be toxins in the water. It could be fluoride in your toothpaste. It could be it could be a number of things. It could also be people don't realize that garlic, which I mentioned in the book, is a toxin. Yeah, garlic has its benefits. It has a lot of great benefits, but one of the downsides to that is if you're a meditator, garlic may not be the best thing for you, especially onions. They actually become a hindrance to meditation. So in many different types of spiritual texts, they try to get their practitioners to avoid those things. Of course, people will still have a little bit of onion and stuff or some garlic in their food, but you definitely don't want to overdo it, because if you're on a spiritual path, those blockages are going to come up and they're going to physically manifest themselves. And it's already bad enough that even if you stop eating all the toxins right now, you have to clear out all the stuff that you have built into your system over time. That stuff has to come up. So it doesn't make sense if you keep adding more toxins to what you're eating, especially if you're on a spiritual path, because your body's going to purge all that stuff out. And purging comes with all purging comes with its challenges, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. They all come with their challenges. So the less toxins you put in your body, the less of that you have to deal with. Oh, and nootropics. This is something that I found out on my own. I came to the realization that nootropics are how do I explain nootropics? Nootropics are certain.
Sorry, quick interjection. The reason why I'm bringing that up is because I noticed that there's a lot of reference to 7 in the book.
There's a lot of reference to 7. Give me a rundown.
The 7 nootropics, and you're talking about
that was by fluke.
The states of consciousness, the chakras,
chakras, all 7, eh?
Yeah, there's this 7 theme in the book.
So that was fluke. Oh gosh, I didn't realize that. That's amazing. That's amazing. So everyone knows the sacred number 7. The reason why 7 is sacred, because 7's mirror number is 2. So anytime you have a 7, it automatically comes with a number 2, and 2 plus 7 gives you 9, and 9 is the number of God, of the Most High. So 7 is so sacred that if you do numerology on Jesus, on the name of Jesus, if you add in Christ, and also if you add in all his disciples, the 12 disciples, and you crunch it down to a single-digit number, you'll get the number 9. That's also including Mary Magdalene. If you take all the numbers and you crunch them down to a single-digit number, you'll get the number 9, which is very interesting. But the number of Jesus Christ, will also come up to a 7. But of course, the mirroring number of 7 is 2, and 2 plus 7 gives you 9, which is the ground of all being. Everything that's being manifested, everything that's manifested is the end result or the karma of this ground of all being. But I mentioned 7 nootropics, right? So one of the nootropics in there is gotu kola. Gotu kola is a herb that meditators have used for thousands of years to balance the 2 hemispheres of the brain. So when I read this information, I said, what would happen if I took one of these nootropics and I applied it to a psychedelic? So I would take the psychedelic. Well, first I'll take the nootropic. I'll take a certain amount of gotu kola. 2 hours later, I would take the psychedelic, and then about 45 minutes later, I'll put on the energy. And you'll realize, for those who practice with this, you realize that your meditation goes even deeper with a nootropic. So you can take a nootropic every day. You can wake up every morning, take a nootropic before taking the meal, depending on the nootropic, because some you have to take before a meal, some you have to take with a meal. And that can enhance your meditation practice. But it also can enhance the psychedelic practice experience as well. So there's nootropics such as gotu kola, bacopa. Bacopa is a very strong one, and ginkgo. So I take 3 of those. I take all 3. I take all 3, and there's other ones that are also in the book as well. But I started off taking Gotu Kola, because Gotu Kola is a leaf, and it's shaped. I believe it's shaped as a heart. I believe the leaf is actually has a heart shape, if I have that correct. Unless I'm thinking about Wakanda, I can't remember. It's one of those shapes anyway, but it resembles something. So, but if you chew on Gotu Kola or you just get the capsules, take those every day. You'll be amazed how that can enhance your meditation. So that's why I make sure I brought up nootropics in the book, because you need brain food, and brain food is very important, especially if you're going to get rid of the toxins in your body. You want to apply the brain foods that are necessary for nerve development, for developing the neurons, the synapses, and the dendrites within the brain. You need these three things, and the axons. You need these things within the brain to develop a healthy brain, and a healthy brain leads to better meditation, and better meditation leads to it can lead to the perpetual experiences, the experience known as sahaja. Sahaja is the highest level of samadhi that a human being can reach, and that's a perpetual state. That when you reach the level of sahaja, you realize that everything is non-dual, that there is no separation between anything. There's no separation between you and other. There's no separation between your right hemisphere of the brain, left hemisphere of the brain. There's no separation between your feminine self and your masculine self. There's no separation between your soul and spirit. So soul meaning Atman, and spirit, if you look into the Hindu tradition, meaning Brahman. Brahman is the ground of all being. It's not, so all those separations go away when you reach the level of sahaja samadhi.
Now I noticed too with the nootropics, because I take the biloba too, the ginkgo, and I was taking it actually when you like I've been taking that for a while, because I noticed that it assists with I take it before bed, because it assists with the dreams and stuff like that.
Oh yes, nice.
So I was doing the energy, listening to that before bed, and I noticed that it accelerated the dream state. It accelerated the dream state.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that in waking up the next day, there was a more refreshing vibe, I guess. Waking up, it wasn't like, oh, you gotta get up now and all that stuff, like it was, wide-eyed, right off the wake up,
That's amazing.
Yeah, one of the things too I wanted to ask you about, because we have some mores on here that are into the psychedelics.
Okay.
And I want you to elaborate on the whole psychedelic and the energy, and where they can get to, adding the energy to their psychedelic experiences or way of life.
I definitely can get into that. What was the first thing? That was second, right? Or was that? Or you want me to talk on that now?
Yeah, talk on that. Yeah.
Okay. What I come to realize back in 2006. In 2006, at this point, I was already 3 years into brainwave entrainment, and I came up with an idea. I said, what would happen if I did a psychedelic with at the time energy wasn't invented yet, but if I did a psychedelic with brainwave entrainment. So I started to run all these experiments. So there was myself and there was a friend of mine who the two of us would work on these experiments to see what would happen, and we realized that when you took a psychedelic, and in this case was psilocybin, when you took a psychedelic with a brainwave entrainment program, especially a low carrier frequency brainwave entrainment program, it enhanced the psychedelic experience, like by far. Like it was mind blowing, the differences that came out of that. So so after, with more experimentation up till 2008, where I actually was able to have my first awakening. Because many people will say, well, doesn't psychedelics naturally give you a spiritual awakening? And my answer is no, they don't. They give you a peak experience. So I want people to know the difference between the two. A psychedelic will give you a peak experience. It's not guaranteeing you a spiritual awakening, because if a person had a spiritual awakening during a psychedelic experience and they had no preparation prior to that, it can mess them up. It can even lead to psychosis. So when many people talk about a great experience that they had from a psychedelic, they're most likely talking about a peak experience, a spiritual peak experience, which can take place. A spiritual awakening is even beyond that. It transcends that. It's very hard to get to. So it took me 5 years to get to that, to get to that experience, even though prior to that, I had many peak experiences leading up to that. So I started to experiment doing brainwave entrainment. At the time, it was Holosync. Holosync is one of the most popular brainwave entrainment programs out there. It was created by a man named Bill Harris. He passed away a few years ago, but he was my mentor. So he was the guy who I learned a lot of stuff from in regards to brainwave entrainment. So I realized that when you experimented by doing your brainwave entrainment practice every day, and then every so often you add a psychedelic in there, and you realize that you can accelerate your growth, like by far, even to the point where even one time can keep it as a permanent state. So what happened in 2008 became a permanent state in regards to my realization of who I was, what I am, and what I'll always will be. So that was my contribution to, I guess you can say, to our community, is by take a binaural beat program, something like energy, combine it with a psychedelic, which you do once in a while. So you may do the psychedelic maybe once a month, once every 3 months, twice a year. The choice is yours, and you see what will come out of that. So people who just do brainwave entrainment alone, that's great. You can do that for a lifetime, and it will get you very, very far in regards to your personal and spiritual growth. But you can accelerate that even more by adding a psychedelic in there. Now, there are different types of psychedelics, and I want to be clear that there's a difference between psychedelics and hard drugs. Hard drugs are hard drugs like cocaine. The list goes on of all the different ones. I can't even remember all of them off the top of my head. But psychedelics that I'm referring to entheogens. Entheogen means generate the God within. So entheogens that are within the tryptamine family. So tryptamines is what we're focusing on. So there are different types of tryptamines. So there's psilocybin, which people call magic mushrooms. There's DMT, NN-DMT, which is the strongest visual psychedelic on the planet that we know of. There's also 5-MeO-DMT, in my opinion, is the strongest, most powerful entheogen on the planet. By far, bypasses psilocybin, everything, by far. Not everyone should experiment with that until they're ready. There's also LSD. LSD has a bad rep, but if you look into LSD is a very powerful and genuine entheogen. And for those who have used LSD, especially if you want to analyze your psyche, LSD is the perfect psychedelic for that. So if you want to analyze your psyche, if you want to go and look into the id, if you want to look into the subconscious mind, if you want to look at past lives, you can look at the evolution of your soul. All of that you can do with LSD, especially if you're doing this with a brainwave entrainment program. And trust me when I tell you this, for people who are listening, when you combine these two, and you have to be very careful when you combine these two, because you want to make sure that you're doing your practice, your brainwave entrainment practice every day, clearing up the nadis, training the two hemispheres of the brain for the two hemispheres of the brain to synchronize. And then when you feel that you're ready, you take the psychedelic. You take the psychedelic, just say if it's psilocybin, you take it and you don't put on the headphones and press play until you feel the feeling of the high coming on. So once you start to feel that feeling, that you realize that you're starting to trip, you put on the headphones, you press play. You sit there for an hour and allow whatever happens that needs to happen for that hour. And if you have a strong enough threshold, like I do, you can go for 3 hours. So what I did a number of times, I'd set up Unity to play for 3 hours. So for the first half hour, it will take me from alpha down to theta, down to delta, and it will keep me into delta for 2.5 hours from that point while on a psychedelic. And you'll be amazed what comes out of that. If I went into what will take place, I'd be stuck here for days. And brother, you know that we've had conversations where I came to work, my mind just blown, saying, "God, you won't believe what's happened to me over the weekend," like that type of stuff. Right? I'll be stuck for weeks trying to explain.
Well, we could take 30 minutes or something to go into. You could go into something if you want. You can go into something just so people can get, just so they can get.
So they get a piece of it. I'll give some snippets. I'll try to see if I can give a snippet for each of the entheogens. So with psilocybin, you can get to the highest point where you can realize, at least to the Turiya standpoint, that you are Atman. Atman, you can use that as to mean soul, your actual soul. So you can realize that you are the soul, and the soul is the manifestation of everything, manifested everything into existence. And you can see that from the soul standpoint, realizing that everything that is witnessing is divine. So you can do that. And even though what I'm saying doesn't even compare to what can actually happen. With LSD now, LSD can give you the experience of what I already just mentioned, where it can break down the psyche. So it can take anything, and you can witness it, and you can see it for what it actually is. Because in your everyday waking state, you don't see things as they actually are. You see the illusion, which they call Maya. But under LSD with the energy, you can experience what everything is, at least from the visual standpoint. I'm trying to see. You can have. Okay, let me give an example. And I'm not talking about the spiritual awakening piece. I can go into that in a second, but you can experience what it's like to be a raindrop, right? So you can have that experience. You can have the experience where it's raining and you're just one of the drops from the rain that's falling, and you can have the experience of being a raindrop before it hits the ground. And as it hits the ground, you can have the experience of yourself splashing. You can have that full experience like that. If you want to have an experience of what it's like to be, in my case, being a chicken, you can have an experience where you're being conceived, and you're growing in the mom's you're growing within the egg that's being fertilized by the egg, and you can have the experience of cracking outside of the egg, and you can have a full-blown experience of being a chicken. You can do that. You can what's another example under LSD? Because there's so many. You can have the experience of you can experience your own birth. So you can under LSD with the combination of energy, you can experience your own birth from the very beginning, from the very beginning of conception, all the way up to the actual birth. And I mean this literally. I'm not saying this as a metaphor. You can actually experience your actual birth, and it's the grossest thing you'll ever experience. I'll tell you that right now. But you can do that, and all those things that you can do doesn't even compare to the spiritual awakening experience that could happen through the LSD experience. There's also the NN-DMT experience. Now, I just want to be clear that there's two types of DMT that I'm talking about here. There's NN-DMT and there's 5-MeO-DMT. These are two different substances, right? So NN-DMT is the most visual psychedelic that we know of. So under NN-DMT, especially with energy, but the difference is with NN-DMT, it's only the trip is only like 15 minutes, 20 minutes long. It's very short. So with that type of experience, you may want to do a energy session first. So you do an hour first, and after the meditation is finished, and then you can do DMT. Or if you're doing energy, for those who have been doing energy, you can listen to energy for the first half hour, and then during the second half hour, you would take DMT and have the 18-minute experience within that half-hour period. And you'll be mind-blown what can take place. So people want to know what can take place with that. Well, you can mind travel. You can go to different realms. You can go to different dimensions. You can go to different planets. You can meet multidimensional beings. You can meet actual aliens. I'm talking about the Greys. You can actually meet them. That can actually happen. But be ready if that ever happens to you. Be ready for that, because it may put you into post-traumatic stress disorder after meeting beings like that. But you can do that. And it can go all the way up to you going into the Akashic Records. And you can actually go to the Akashic Records and meet the blinking eye, the giant blinking eye that's guarding the whole Akashic Records. You can do that. You can have the experience of being the entire universe, the physical universe itself. You can have the experience of meeting, as I mentioned, multidimensional beings, but there are different types. There are multidimensional beings that have no physical body. They're just eyes everywhere. It's strange. You can also meet beings that have 1,000 legs, 1,000 arms, thousands and thousands of eyes, everything. You can meet giant beings. You can meet small beings. You can meet angel type beings. You can meet, the list goes on of all the different types of beings, and you can go to all these different worlds, and their cities that they reside in are very complex, they're very mathematically complex. And you can go into these cities, they'll take you and they'll show you around. They're very friendly. They'll take you and they'll show you around of their kingdom or their city, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's the outside of the city or the interior. They'll take you through them, and your mind will be absolutely blown what you're looking at because you can't comprehend it. It's so beautiful and so sublime and mathematically advanced that your mind can't even make anything of it. But you can do that.
I think that's the best part. The not being able to comprehend, but being able to comprehend.
But being able to comprehend, not able to comprehend, but being able to comprehend.
I had the giant experience one time. The giant.
Gosh. You met the giants, eh? Yeah. The giant beings actually exist.
Yeah. And all I remember was the door, because the door was how they moved the door was how we move the door. But I knew that there's no, I can't be close. I don't want to get crushed under. There was a fear thing there because everything was giant.
Yeah.
But there was also sort of a safety thing.
I feel
because they weren't trying to cause any harm or anything like that. But just as you said, the mathematics, because that's part of the things I was looking at. I was like, damn, everything's so
complex.
Precise. Yeah, everything's so precise.
Complex. It's just
complex.
It's mind blowing. Yeah.
So analytical, but so free forming.
Yeah, free forming at the same time. It's it's organic in itself.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Now, the door that you're referring to, is it the door that you enter before the experiences happen, or this is passing the threshold when you're in it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that there's a guard. There's a being that's always at the guard. It's the same being in different forms. I can always tell it's the same being who guards the entrance.
I might even missed him just looking at everything.
Yeah, and he gives me access. He gives me access to go past the door, and once I get past that door, I can't comprehend anything from that point. And then at some point, it becomes clear, and then I can comprehend what's going on in the space that I'm in. But it's the same guy every time. The same guy every time in different shapes, and I can't even comprehend his form and shape because I can't tell if he's thin or fat, big or tall. Yeah. Everything is happening within this form.
Yeah,
so I said, he's probably St. Peter. He's probably the guy, the guardian of the person. Yeah. He's probably St. Peter, because it's very interesting how the same being is always there. But those things can happen with an NNDMT. Now, if you but NNDMT can go all the way where you can have a non-dual experience, where you can have the realization that there are no distinctions between anything. That can happen. But then there's a 5-MeO DMT, and 5-MeO DMT is 1,000 times more powerful than NDMT. But with 5-MeO DMT, usually there's no visual experience; it's just a feeling. So I also want to put that out there for a second. A lot of people don't find that to be appealing. They say, "Well, I want to have a bit." I was like, "No, trust me on this one. Trust me on this one. You don't need the visual. The visual is a whole different experience. But with 5-MeO DMT, you can end up having a feeling." To the point where you realize that you're all existence of absolutely everything, of past, present, and future, and everything in between. It's absolutely remarkable.
Yeah, I can't remember how and this was with shrooms, but there was a feeling of being connected to everything.
Yeah.
But it was literal.
But it was literal.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, if you stay connected," I mean that it's not that. It's it's a literal.
Yeah, I was connected to everything.
Really
connected. Yeah. Somebody asked in the chat a good reference to obtain psychedelics, or how do you go about acquiring these different psychedelics?
Oh well, some people go to the dark web to find people. Some people have a trusted source of someone who they know who's like that spiritual freaky person who just has access to certain things, right? And if you know how spiritual they are, you may trust their recommendations. There are other ways, and there are a number of very spiritual practitioners out there, and I've met a number of them who do this. They do this for a living, so this is what they do. So, like with 5-MeO DMT, I did not try to do that on my own. I actually met with an actual respected practitioner, and he took me in 11 times with 5-MeO DMT. So there are different ways, and there are underground sites that people can get access to. They need a password and all that stuff to enter to these sites, and they would only get it from someone who is already connected to that site, and they trust that person, and they may give them access to that. Or some people, like some of us, will know a shaman. So like you know that we also did the ayahuasca experience, which I did like 12 times, I believe, 12 times with the shaman. And the shaman was able to bring me in at least 10 of those 12 times into something that was just absolutely phenomenal too. So all of that stuff can happen. So the only reason why I was able to meet that shaman because I knew a high priest. I'm friends with a high priest. I don't know what the spiritual practice is per se, but he's a high priest of this particular philosophy and practice. And so he was the one that connected me to this shaman. And from there, I brought in a number of people. I even brought in one of your guys to the shaman, and he gone to the shaman at least 3 times. I was with him at least 2 of those times, so which was amazing. So even that, the ayahuasca experience is another thing that I could get into, which is just absolutely mind blowing. But what I'm trying to say is all these things with a daily meditation practice could lead to what people really want is to reach the level of Bodhi, to reach Tariatita. That state will bypass any visual states, anything of anything. It will bypass all of that. And when it happened to me in 2019, there were no entheogens involved. This was after a meeting with a spiritual guru by the name of Paramahamsa Vishwananda. I met with him, and he just looked into my eyes for 20 seconds and sent me on my way. And then this was September 3rd of 2019. And then by November, I had a spiritual awakening, which was very powerful. And then it happened again December 14th of 2019 of the same year, which bypassed any experience I've ever done prior to that. Everything. It transcended absolutely everything. And this is just from a man looking into my eyes for 20 seconds. Since then, I met with him because after that, the pandemic hit. So I met with him again about 5 or 6 times online, probably 7 times online. Who's counting? But I met him a number of times online. And then I just recently met with him. I met with him a year ago, last year, September 3rd. And then I met with him twice this year on August 26th. He came to Toronto, and then I went to see him in New York on September 3rd of this year. So we just came back from that experience. And so a lot has happened since I started doing this stuff back 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. So but meditation does that. Meditation clears all this stuff. Meditation brings you high states of consciousness so that if you do get to have the experience of meeting such a being, he or she can bring you even further because you've already did all the preparation and all that prior to that.
Someone asked also on where could they find the energy, and someone asked, have you met a wolf? Have you met a wolf during any of your experiences?
A wolf? No, not that I can recall. But I met things a lot more scarier than wolves. I'll tell you that for sure. A lot more scary than a wolf.
You can go in. You can go in, you can go in.
No, it takes some of these things I can't even explain with words. Yeah. I tried to, and I'd be like, I don't even know how to go around this. Yeah, because they're that frightening. It can be anyway, right? And sometimes the thing that you're looking at is showing you yourself, it's showing you your demon side and how you have to transcend it.
You're watching yourself.
You're watching yourself. So I always say, stare at your demons until they become divine. Right? You stare your demons long enough, they will become angels. They will evolve into angels. You just have to be able to accept your demon side for what it actually is, and forgive yourself. Watch without bias, watch without judgment, and watch yourself transcend to this angelic version of yourself, which you actually are. In regards to where can you get energy, It's only because this is a different platform. Because there's a link to that. But if you
Is
go
it on the blog?
Yeah, it's connected to the blog. So if you go to my blog, morganosmith.blog, at the end of each blog post, you'll see a link. It's my Linktree link, and that will take you to my book. It will take you to the Eunergy page, because the Eunergy is not officially out to the public. I just have it out set up so that people who are interested in going on this journey, they can join me on this journey. It costs a bit of money to purchase it, but for your people here, if you hit me up directly, I'll give you a really good deal. Just connect me personally, whether it's through innovativecoaching@gmail.com, or you can even hit me up on Instagram, which is what's my Instagram thing, at morgano.smith, I think it is. Yeah, it's all there. You hit me up directly, and we'll work something out that you'll be happy with. And all my other interviews are there, where I'm talking about energy, or we're talking about non-duality. All of that is there. The book is out, Bodhi in the Brain, which you can get on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and many other places, many other outlets. So that's where you can get Eunergy. So the reason why I haven't said the actual link for Eunergy, because it's not just eunergy.com. It's like whatever. But if you click on that, it will take you to that page, and it will have information about Eunergy, and you can purchase the first level of Eunergy there. The second level is also available there as well. But I always try to encourage people, don't try to jump stages, levels. Yeah. Do what's recommended for each level. The reason why we say this is because if you don't, what could happen is you can end up having a Kundalini syndrome. And that is very, very painful. So the stuff that I mentioned before in regards to what could happen to you physically, emotionally, and mentally can happen times 10. Is that the symptoms that you listed, with the headaches and the addictions and the anxiety and all that? Well, those are the normal stuff that would just happen from your spiritual practice. If you end up with a Kundalini syndrome that's so rough, that will traumatize you. Could you very painful. So people need to talk about. Could you talk about that? So people need to be careful when it comes to any type of spiritual practice, because if you do too much of it too soon, and your nadis haven't been purified, it's going to backfire on you. So people have to be really careful with this. I know a lot of people want this stuff real quick, but again, I've been at this for many years. Like, trust me, I haven't seen, like you, for example, I haven't seen you in person since, gosh, it's been at least 6 years, 7 years. I haven't seen you in person, right? And I've been doing my practice the whole time, leading up to what I've been working towards. And that took me 16 and a half years to reach that, right? It's a slow process. It's a very slow process. It took me 16 and a half years to get to what I'm calling Tiriyatita. Even though prior to that, many spiritual awakenings and many peak experiences, but also within that, many painful experiences too. So a lot of things could happen where this will happen naturally when you're meditating, whether it's traditionally or with a low carrier frequency binaural beat like Eunergy. But you can like lose your memory temporarily, where you can look at a family member and not realizing who they are. That could happen, and then after you hear their voice, it'll kick in, and you realize, oh gosh, that's my brother. That could happen. You can lose your memory to your short-term memory, where you forget how to drive your vehicle. If you're a performer, you can be on stage and forget your whole entire act. That could happen. You can. What else could happen? You can go through a period of depression that is so painful that it's just hard to bear. You can go through physical pain, which could be pain in the chest, pain in the kidney. You can go through a series of rashes that can appear on any part of the skin. If you have any scars or if you have any tattoos, they can start to itch very badly. So you want to be careful with that, because they can start to itch, because your body has memory. So anything you've done to the body, that memory is still there. So when you start to meditate over time, all that stuff is going to come up to the surface as well, because it's trauma to the body, even though you may not see it that way. Because like if you're getting a tattoo, that's a social, cultural thing. But the body doesn't know the difference between that. So the body just sees it as trauma. So the body stores that information. So when you start meditating over time, that may come up again. It's different for different people. But I have 2 tattoos on my body. And after a short period of time, I think like a year in, those tattoos start to itch for about a week, and you have to like treat it the same way as you would if you got a tattoo and you treated it with aloe vera and things like that. You do that with that part of the body. Other things that could happen, dark night of the soul, like what I mentioned, where you can go through a series of guilt of your guilty conscience. So all the stuff that you've done in your past that you know that is not just could come up to the surface, and it can haunt you for a period of time. It can happen for days, it can happen for weeks, it can happen for months. So you want to be careful with that. So if you were one of those anxious people and you wanted to like jump to level 2 without finishing with level 1, the stuff that I mentioned can happen times 10, maybe even times 20. And you want to avoid that because just having it naturally is hard enough. So you don't want to add more of that to you. So there's no reason for anyone to jump, because I have people hit me up all the time and say, hey, can you send me level 2? And I'm like, you've only been on level 1 for 2 months. He's like, yeah, I know, but I don't think I'm feeling anything. I'm like, no. Go through your 4 months or 6 months, because it's 4 to 6 months. Do your time. And when you're finished your 4 to 6 months, hit me up and you'll get level 2. Because I'm like, trust me, even if it doesn't get you in the 4 or 6 months, it's going to get you. So you want to be extra careful with that. Even with traditional meditation, you'll hear we have documents, sacred documents going back thousands of years of what people have gone through, going through the meditation, and they were doing it properly. They were going by the book, listening to their guru, and going by the book. But now we live in the fast age, where we can do these things through audio technology, and you can purchase. Like I have 13 levels, and a person can purchase level 2, and I can't stop them. And then they go and start using level 2 because they feel that level 1 wasn't strong enough, and then something hits, and then they call and they start blaming me for what's happening to them. When I said, did you read the instructions? Did you listen to what I had to say? Like I've studied this. I've gone through this personally. So I urge people, whether it's my program or other spiritual programs, you want to be easy with it. So if the practice, it requires you to do 3 hours a day with the traditional method, and that's the practice. That's the practice. Don't try doing 4. Within my practice, you're doing an hour a day. And I do recommend 2 or 3 if you're at the 4-month period where you can handle a little more. You can handle maybe a half an hour more. You can handle an hour more. Then you can probably do that, because I've done that many times. But if stuff is coming up to the surface, you don't want to add an extra hour. And I know people who have gone through and are going through dark stuff and still try to push themselves to do another hour because they want this stuff so badly. And I'm like, you're just going to cause more damage than good. So you want to be really, really careful with that, because your body will tell you, your body and your mind will tell you that something is too much, because your body is intelligent. It's the most intelligent thing. It will tell you when something's too much. So you want to avoid all those things as much as you can.
That's a good segue. Yeah, that's a good segue to speaking about because another interesting part in the book that I found was the multiple intelligences theory. That was pretty interesting, and I found the because we're in the music thing, the music the music intelligence and the spiritual intelligence was very interesting. If you could just talk about that's that whole aspect of the theory.
So when someone uses a program like the energy, because the energy is based on low carrier frequencies, which just means that because someone may be asking, what does it mean by low carrier frequency? So what I mean is the reason why energy is so strong is because we lowered the carrier frequency. So earlier I mentioned pitch frequency, which is taking 2 tones. So if I took a tone of 21 hertz in one ear and another tone of 20 hertz in the other ear, it will produce a brain frequency tone of 1 hertz. So that's what will happen within the center of my brain. It will produce a frequency of 1 hertz. So that frequency of 1 hertz is a beat frequency. So you have 2 pitch frequencies at different pitches, and that creates a beat frequency, which is a auditory illusion that you're creating in your brain, right? And that's the tone that's entraining your brain. And then you have carrier frequency. So carrier frequency is so I mentioned 20 hertz and 21 hertz, 20 hertz in one ear, 21 hertz in the other ear. But if I played 11 hertz in one ear and 10 hertz in the other ear, by lowering the pitch frequency, I'm still getting a beat frequency of 1 hertz. The difference is it now has a stronger amplitude because I'm lowering the pitch frequency of those 2 tones. right? So that's called a carrier frequency. So 11 plus 10 gives you an answer, and you take that answer and you divide it by 2, and the answer you get from that would be your, sorry, no, in this case, no, it's 11 plus 12, and the answer you get from that, and you divide it by 2. Yeah, you do divide it by 2, and the answer you get from that is your carrier frequency. So the energy is based on lower carrier frequencies, which is different than regular binaural beats that you may get off like YouTube or from other companies that sell you regular binaural beats, right? So this stuff is very powerful when you lower the carrier frequency. When you lower the carrier frequency, it equates to longer sessions of meditation. So 1 hour of energy would be the equivalent of 10 to 11, 12 hours of traditional meditation in one sitting. That's how powerful this stuff can be. So people want to be really, really careful with that. So you do 1 hour per day until later on you may want to increase that to an hour and a half if you have the time and things like that. But you're asking about the multiple intelligences. So because of the lower carrier frequencies and the synchronization of the two hemispheres of the brain, some people start to experience change in their different types of intelligence. So as you mentioned musical intelligence, spiritual intelligence, but you also have logical, mathematical intelligence. You have spatial intelligence. You have interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, and so on. And there's other one. There's more. There are more intelligence beyond the 8, but those are the 8 that I was focusing on. And what people realize that when they start meditating over a period of time, that certain intelligence starts to become enhanced. So like in my case, my mathematical intelligence became a little more enhanced. So I'm able to, so energy is based on a mathematical equation of 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5, which is based on a mathematical theorem that was created by a mathematician by the name of Marco Rodin. So that's his name. So I went and I learned his mathematical theorem, and then in 2010, I had an incredible, profound insight that showed me how to apply that mathematics to brainwave entrainment, which became energy. So that's how that happened. So for my practice of brainwave entrainment, my mathematical intelligence improved, but so did my interpersonal intelligence, my intrapersonal intelligence, my spiritual intelligence, my emotional intelligence. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. That when you, especially if you're, I'm going to go back a little bit, especially when you're doing LSD, especially in the combination with the binaural beat program, you can experience the full-blown emotional intelligence, where you have the compassion and the empathy for all living and non-living things. And I mean this literally, where you can have the experience of absolute love at the highest level, universal love. I believe they also call it agape love. I hope I have the right one. I think it's agape love. All that stuff can happen when you enhance your emotional intelligence. So now going back to the multiple intelligences, those things can start to become enhanced. It's different for everyone though, because it just depends on your makeup. So it doesn't mean that when you do energy, all 8 of your intelligence are going to improve drastically. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they may all improve, but at different levels, depending on your personality trait, your makeup, your genetic makeup, and all that. But if you have one of those intelligence that lies dormant, that has the potential, that can blossom, and you can realize your potential within that particular intelligence. So that can happen, and that will happen to, I believe, anyone. It just depends on how you're made up. So just say if, say for example, spatial intelligence. The other intelligence I forgot was kinesthetic intelligence. So that's the 8 right there. But just say if it's spatial intelligence, just say you have the potential to be a good artist, a good visual artist, but you never really mastered it. You can start meditating, and at some point you realize that you do have the ability of spatial intelligence, where you can draw and you're a good visual artist. That could happen. If you're a musician or a person that dabbles with music, you start meditating, and your abilities with music can improve. When it comes to intrapersonal skills is really important when it comes to spiritual enlightenment. You have to develop strong intrapersonal skills to attain that. But that can improve with meditation, especially with the energy. Your interpersonal skills, where you connect with other people, can improve when you start meditating with the energy. So you'll start to realize after some time that you have a better, easier emotional connection with people, and people like you more, and people want to hang out and be with you, and all that. And also too, if you're looking for love and all that type of stuff, that can easily happen. You can walk around and you just become a chick magnet, pretty much. That could happen. Kinesthetic intelligence, if you're a dancer or if you're, anything that has to do with movement, can improve, where you can really communicate with people through the body, through body language. And it doesn't have to be any of those things. It can just be you having a nonverbal communication with people, where people can feel what you're saying just through the body. That can improve greatly especially through energy, with that type of intelligence. So all the different types of intelligence can improve, which allows you to get closer and closer to your potential self. So I'll say that about the multiple intelligence. And that when I was writing that I was really excited about that piece, because it was amazing of how many different things start to improve through the daily use of the energy. And also to the old program I used to use, which was HoloSync, which inspired me to create energy, and how all these things start to change when you start to when you're looking at yourself and like, oh my gosh, I'm a lot better at this thing now that I wasn't able to conquer before, and all these things start to improve. So if you really care about personal development, and you care about things like that, especially in regards to the intelligence, that may be something that people would want to work on, because it's a highly valuable thing to have.
Peace, Brother B. I don't know if you have a question or a comment. You're on the floor.
Islam, everyone. How's the panel doing?
Everybody's well. We're here.
No doubt. I had a question. I don't know if you answered it already, but I was wondering what wavelength is brain wavelength is what brain wavelength is telepathy on? I don't know if you answered that already.
I didn't answer it. I don't know what it is, but telepathy may happen at more than one brainwave. It may happen in theta, and it may happen in, I'm guessing here, it may also happen in gamma. So theta, it may happen in theta, which is a slower brainwave, and it may happen in gamma. Gamma is like 30 to, if you include hypergamma, it's like 30 to 100 hertz per second. So that's a possibility. It may also happen in delta. Yeah, it may happen in delta. It just depends on what type of telepathy we're talking about here, because there's different levels and different forms of it, right? So you may get different types of telepathy in those areas.
I'm referring to like the highest form. It's like trying to get a comprehension of telepathy and the levels that it stand on. But for the highest, I was wondering, like, for the highest form of any brainwave, what will it be? Like the highest form, like, is telepathy the highest form?
It's definitely not the highest form.
Well, all right. Awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely not the highest, but it depends what we mean, though. Because if you reach the highest level of consciousness, it includes telepathy. Right? It includes that. It's just on a different at a different level. Because if you reach the highest state of being, you're actually activating all your brainwaves at the same time. You're activating all your brainwaves simultaneously. So you're activating the delta, the theta, the alpha, the beta, the gamma, the hypergamma, the lambda simultaneously. And when that happens, in that moment, you're experiencing telepathy, compassion, empathy, consciousness, existence, reincarnation, karma, manifestation, causation, non-duality, non-local, non-locality. All that stuff is happening all at once. So if you got to the highest state of being, which is activating all your brainwaves at the same time, all those things would happen, and more. I haven't even listed, not even close to all the things that would happen, because you would experience the minds of every human being on the planet. not only the minds of every human being, but you experience the minds of every living creature that's ever existed, past, present, and future, outside of the solar system, beyond all solar systems, beyond all multiverses, all at once, simultaneously. All of that would happen. You experience the macro and the micro all at once.
Islam. Next question. I don't know if you answered this also. So the highest form of conscious would be what?
We call that Teriatita. So Teriatita means the fifth. So Teriatita is a word that really means the highest level of non-duality. So at non-duality, there are no distinctions between the minds. Like when you talk about telepathy, there are no distinctions between the minds. So all minds become one thing. Everything becomes one thing. And it becomes what we call absolute monism. Absolute monism is absolute monism. And that would be the highest level of consciousness possible to a human being. This is where you realize that you're God. This is when you realize that you're Brahman, which they say para-Brahman. In English, it's actually para-Brahman in Sanskrit. You come to the realization that you're that. So some people may know this intellectually, but it's another thing to actually have the actual realization that you've been that. And you've been that all along. That's all you've ever been. And all the stuff that's happening is the illusion that it's creating, which they call in Hinduism, they call that Maya. So the highest level of consciousness would be Teriatita, or Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and there are other names for this, but that's what would happen. But even beyond that, there's, as I mentioned earlier, you probably weren't on it yet, it's called Sahaja Samadhi, where you have the perpetual experience at the highest level throughout your everyday being who you are, but being who you are as an individual, but yet Parabrahan at the exact same time throughout your everyday life.
Islam. So Teriatita,
yeah.
Teriatita is the highest level of consciousness. When telepathy is applied to it across the board, can that be reference to like complete love?
Telepathy?
Across the board in all
I
those
see what you're saying.
brainwave energies.
You can look at it that way. Because if you had the experience of absolute love, of compassion, of empathy, you have to understand a person to be able to do this, which could take a level of telepathy to do that. Because people look at telepathy as communication between two or more people, right? But we're talking about the level of telepathy where I'm not only just communicating with what you're saying, I'm also feeling what you're saying. I'm also not just feeling what you're saying, but I'm feeling your actual being, your actual existence, to the point where my existence and your existence becomes one. And if that happens, if that occurs, and then we realize that our existence and the other groups, all of that becomes one. And then you realize that you become one with all the plantation, and you realize that you become one with all bodies of water. And then you realize that you become one with all animals, and then all microscopic creatures and all elements. So all the gases and all the chemicals, and not just the third dimension, because you become one with the third dimension, but you also become one with the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh and the eighth and the ninth dimension. All of that becomes one whole thing, and that would be considered like the highest level of telepathy, the highest level of compassion, the highest level of empathy, the highest level of interconnectedness, the highest level of everything, but also the lowest levels too, because all the low stuff and all the high stuff also comes together where there are no distinctions between anything. Then all you are is absolute pure being. And at that level, when they say that God knows everything, at that level, you know everything. You can't hold it, because when you come back to your individual self, you can't hold it. But in that moment, you become all-knowing. But you're not just knowing something. You become knowing itself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Beautiful.
And any human being can attain this. It just takes time and practice. For most of us, we have to train for many, many years to do this. For me, it took 16 and a half years to attain that. But there are some people who are born that way. Like the person who I met, who I was blessed by Paramahamsa Vishwananda, apparently he was born that way. That's why he's able to look in people's eyes, put his hands on their head, and give you this blessing where you can actually attain that yourself, if you haven't already.
Right.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother.
Blessings.
Beautiful.
Peace, bro.
Islam, we yield the floor.
Peace, Mark.
I'm out.
one of the things that we acknowledge as far as in the Moorish paradigm, we acknowledge Noble Drew Ali as the mastermind. And we say that because of all the different, as we're studying him, we find out things all the time that just, where was he at in his mind when he thought about these things?
Because he was a true master, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that hit me in the book was relative to what I'm going to put on the screen right now. So this is the holy of the Moorish Science Temple, and I just wanted you to speak about the 4 quadrants model, because this symbol is known as the 4 quadrants.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, the 7 and the 4 quadrants. So I just wanted you to talk about the 4 quadrant model while I have this up, so we could see that, and also too with regard to some of the other stuff with Ken Wilber.
I was actually just related right to Ken Wilber. Yeah, I was just going to do that. So the 4 quadrants is based on you can say the 4 dimensions of being. So you have the 4 quadrants. You have the I quadrant, which is your subjective mind, or anything that's subjective. That's the I quadrant. You have the we quadrant, which is you and your group. So that we could be you and your siblings, you and your family, you and your social circle, you and your religion, you and your philosophy, or the people who are involved in the philosophy. It could be you and your nation. So that's we. And then you have your it, and it can refer to your brain, your nervous system, your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, all the stuff that makes up the human body. But it could also represent objects. So the book, Bodhi in the Brain, is an object. The lotion I have on my is an object. My hands are objects, but other people are objects too, right? So that represents the it, and then the it represents systems. So it could be political system, religious systems, philosophical systems, anything that's Semitic could be part of that, but it could also be like social systems, subcultures, traditions, ecosystems, and we can go on, solar systems, and we can go on. So those are your 4. So you have the I, the we, the it, and the its. The reason why this is important is because most of us are caught up in one of the 4. So some people who are like spiritual or have been meditating, they may be caught up in the I quadrant. So like I had these experiences. I am getting deeper in my meditation. I am trying to reach spiritual enlightenment, or I am trying to be a better person, be a more ethical person, or whatever the case is. But they may be ignoring the we, the it, and the its. Because some people, when they get caught up in meditation, they forget about the physical body. They actually care less about the physical body, and they're only just dealing with the mind. But you have to care about the physical body too, because all this stuff is the 4 quadrants is why you exist. So you have the I, which is the subjective. So that can be the mind, feelings that the mind experiences, all of that. It could be mystical experiences, visions, dreams that you have. All that stuff could be considered the I. The it would be the brain, the 2 hemispheres of the brain, the cortical part of the brain, the limbic brain, the reptilian brain, the pineal gland, the nervous system itself, the heart. All that stuff would be the it. And then you have the we. The we has to do with it could be your family, social group, subculture, culture, tradition. It could be people. Yeah, it could be any of those things. And then you have, it also could be your nation. And then it could also be all of us together as a group. If we recognize the other alien beings that are out there, we may look at ourselves as we versus them. So that's the we quadrant. And then you have the its. And the its have to do with systems that holds things together. So any form of law, politics and procedures, any systemic system, all of those are the its. So you as a human being, to be fully integrated, you want to be able to recognize the I, the we, the it, and the its. not one over the three, but all three of them equally. And it's not easy to do, actually, because all of us are fixated on one or two of those four. But something happens that is absolutely miraculous when you're able to combine all four. And when someone has a spiritual awakening, that's what happens. When you have a spiritual awakening, you realize that you're all four. And also, if you go even higher, not only are you all four, but you're even beyond that. So I don't have paper and pencil and I didn't put any images in the book in regards to the four quadrants. But there's, if you look up the four quadrants online, especially from Ken Wilber, who's the philosopher, he's actually one of my teachers. So I just finished doing a course with him. Actually, not too long, just a few weeks ago, I finished the mastery course, where he's the teacher of that course. And prior to that, I did an 18-month course in integral theory that teaches us all this. And then, so the whole goal is to define your full potential, to realize your full potential, which is those four quadrants. And at the moment of a spiritual awakening, you realize that you're these four quadrants and beyond that.
Ashe. And I guess to close out, you can speak on well, two things. One, if somebody is having difficulty dealing with an issue or getting a certain outcome, how can the energy assist? And also the last part of the book, the energy and the healing process for people who are having inner issues and helping them, because I know you were talking about the need to talk, the catharsis, things relative to that as far as the healing.
Okay. The first one again was
if there's an obstacle that somebody's dealing with.
Oh yes.
Let's say they can't, they keep failing this test or something, you know, and they've studied, they've went through all the things that they can.
Yeah.
Could they tap in through energy to get whatever answers they need or whatever the case is?
Well, unity creates awareness. So one of the main goals of unity is to raise your level of awareness. So when you raise your level of awareness, you start to realize that everything is okay. So my teacher, Bill Harris, taught us, whatever happens, let it be okay. Whatever happens, let it be okay. Whatever happens, let it be okay.
Like, you mean what? Like whatever?
Whatever.
Positive, negative.
Positive or negative. It doesn't mean you don't do anything about it. It just means that when you're working on whatever that is that you're trying to achieve or attain, or trying to remove, you allow it to be for what it is, because it's there. Because remember, when someone has the realization of spiritual enlightenment, they realize that everything is perfect as it is. So everything that's happening is supposed to happen, and you're just caught up in that because you're part of the whole process that is creation happening into being. So anything that's happening to you, it's there for a reason. So your job is to watch it without judgment or bias. And this is not easy to do. It's very difficult to do. But when you're practicing with the energy, over time, this gets easier. So you're able to watch everything that happens in your life or other people's life without judgment and without bias. Because once you add judgment and bias into that, that causes the resistance that's part of our suffering. So when you're able to remove the bias and the judgment and accept it for what it is, you suffer less. And so energy helps you to I don't want to say detached, because detached sounds like that you're detaching yourself from something and you just don't care about it. That's not what I'm saying. But it becomes a thing where the thing that's happening, you just say, oh, that is interesting that this thing is happening. It doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean that you don't like it. It just means it's happening, and you deal with it accordingly. And it's better to deal with something accordingly in that state than to be fully biased and judgmental about it. And we're humans. We're going to be biased and judgmental at times. I don't think you can 100% get rid of that, but it can happen less. so that whatever you're dealing with in your life, it just happens as it's supposed to happen, because energy eventually, because it's synchronizing the two hemispheres of the brain, you start to learn how to, what's the best way that I can put this? You start to learn how to, what's the best way I can say this? It's the best, it teaches you how to experience everything that's happening to you without the attachment. The attachment comes with baggage, lots and lots of baggage. You want to be able to handle everything that's happening without that baggage, so that when it's happening, you realize that you're just a character in the play. So everything that's happening in the universe is the play. You're the character that's within the play. And then what energy does, it gives you awareness where you realize, oh gosh, my ego is just an actor in this play. And all the stuff that's happening is just the way how the script has been written. It's not exactly like that, but it's the best metaphor that I can use. But it's just that's the script that's been written. And so I'm just playing my part within the script, whether it is that I'm supposed to get rid of it, or I'm supposed to, whatever the case is, you're just an actor in the play and not being caught up in the play. Because the thing is, the reason why we suffer, because we forgot that we actually created all this and we're actors in our own play. We just forgot about that. So once you remember that you're an actor in your own play, a lot of that stuff goes away. You still feel the pain and all the stuff that's happening, but you relieve yourself from the resistance that causes a lot of the suffering that comes along with that. And in regards to the other thing that you mentioned, that goes into the shadow healing process. So we all have shadows, and shadows refer to anything that triggers you. So anything that triggers you could be associated to a dark shadow, and anything that really delights you could also could be associated with a golden shadow. But right now we'll just talk about dark shadows. So everyone has dark shadows. No matter where you are in the spiritual path, you have a dark shadow. So it could be at the lowest level of consciousness, or it could be at the highest level of consciousness. You will always find shadows. So the energy in combination with other practices can help with dealing with shadow, which they call shadow work. So I mentioned earlier about ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is a type of entheogen that helps you to deal with your dark shadows. So because all the entheogens, they have something special that's different about all of them. So when it comes to dealing with dark shadows, ayahuasca is probably the second best thing to use. The best thing to use would probably be iboga. Iboga is a psychedelic which is grown in West Africa, and that is, from what I hear from people, because I've never done iboga, I hear from people that's even more powerful than ayahuasca. So those two substances can help with dealing with dark shadows. So you can go into whatever it is that's causing the trigger, and you can face it. Kind of what I mentioned earlier in regards to looking at your demons. But in this case, you're looking at your dark shadows, and you can face it, and you can look at your dark shadows without judgment, without bias, and you can start to love your shadow. And once you start to love your shadow, you take your shadow and you integrate it into your actual being. Because the reason why it's causing suffering, because you're separating yourself from the shadow. Because I have nothing to do with the shadow. That's the bad part. That has nothing to do with me. I'm not that person. I'm not, whatever the case is, I'm not prejudiced. That's not me. Yet everything that you do in certain situations leads to a person who's prejudiced. But a person who disowns prejudice, the prejudice will start to haunt them. It becomes a dark shadow. So what you do now when you drink something like ayahuasca, you go into that part of the mind, into the unconscious mind, and you face the very shadow that's causing that trigger. And you keep facing it. You keep looking at it. You keep addressing it. You start to let go of your judgment, let go of your bias, and then over time you start to love whatever it is that is called your shadow. You integrate it back into your psyche, and then you embody it. And now that shadow is no longer bothering you to the same degree that it once did. So that has to do with shadow work. And shadow work is very important because when it comes to the stuff that I've been taught, it's not just about the spiritual awakening. Spiritual awakening is 1 out of 4 pieces, right? The goal is to awake, to wake up, clean up, show up. What am I missing? Wake up, grow up, clean up, and show up. So I'll explain what the 4 are. So waking up is what we're mostly talking about. Waking up realizing that you're not the ego, and realizing that you're God. So that would be waking up. So that we're talking about states of consciousness. And then you have growing up, and growing up has to do with the psychological stages of psychological development. So everyone is at a certain stage of psychological development. The higher you are in the psychological development, the better you are as a person reaching your full potential as a human being. So there's these 8 different stages, and see, it's not 7 this time. So there's 8 different stages of this, and you're going up each stage. And at the highest level, so it starts off at archaic, and at the highest level is supermind. And supermind is the level of consciousness where you've bypassed, you've transcended, I should say, you transcended the egocentric self, the ethnocentric self. So the egocentric self is the ego, me. Ego actually means self. So you bypass the egocentric self, that I am Morgan, I am this, I am that, and then you move into you evolve into the ethnocentric self, where it's about you and your people. So that can be your group. Again, like what I mentioned before, your family, your gender. It could be any of those things. Your class, your creed. That will be your ethnocentric stage. And then you can transcend into world-centric stage. And at world-centric stage, you treat all beings, all human beings, equally, no matter of the creed, the class, the gender, none of those things. All that stuff is no longer apparent. And then at the highest stage is called cosmocentric, and that's Cosmo with a K, and that's cosmocentric, where you find the oneness, and you have the love for all beings, regardless of species. So it could be animals, everything, and that includes the entire universe. So that has to do with psychological levels of development. And then you have cleaning up, which has to do with cleaning up the shadow, your dark shadows and your golden shadows. That's cleaning up. So that's just as important too. And then you have showing up. After you've done the growing up and the waking up and the cleaning up, how do you show up to the public? So that's another thing. And you know, as you're a person who shows up, it's challenging showing up, because when you show up, you can be confronted by different types of people who may try to attack or whatever the case is, just because of you showing up. It may trigger someone, because when you show up, you may actually trigger someone's dark shadow who has a problem with people who show up, especially with a belief system that they may not agree with. So they come out and they attack you because they're just projecting their dark shadows onto you. So that has to do with showing up. So once a person is able to do a lot of cleaning up, well, a lot of waking up, growing up, cleaning up, when you have those 3 done, you now try to show up. And that's when you try to inspire others and try to get people to do the same. And as you know, it's not easy work, but you do it anyway because you have love for all people. So that's what that has to do with. So that healing process is healing the shadows, getting down to the deep and the dark and dirty part of yourself, which is the unconscious mind. And the reason why it's the unconscious mind, because we're not even aware of it. It's just happening every day, whether we're awake or asleep. It's happening, and it's the foundation of everything that we are. But once you start to realize what's going on, it's no longer unconscious; it becomes conscious. So the goal is to let the unconscious become conscious, and you keep going in, digging deeper and digging deeper. And for those who have done ayahuasca or have done LSD, will know how deep that hole goes, and it's very deep, and it's probably never ending, because the deeper you go, you find more stuff, and the stuff may not be yours; it may be the collective unconscious. And all that stuff has to be healed too. At least you have to be able to accept it from your standpoint, so that when you come back, you're showing up even more and more and more, because at this point you have very little resistance and you have very little bias, you have very little judgment. But you're a human being. We're always going to have these things. That's part of the human condition. But the goal is to reduce those things to lesser degrees until you're able to show up, and that's what will affect the people around you, will affect the world and all of that. So that we leave our legacy. When we pass on, we've left a legacy behind, which leaving a map that people can follow.
That's powerful, powerful build. Oh yeah, one of the things too I wanted to ask about. How come you're talking about Morgan O. Smith, author, philosopher, spiritual teacher, and founder of Energy Meditation, and you don't have comedian up there?
Because it was starting to throw people off, you know. It's like, what? It was starting to throw people off. But even though that was my former profession, I'm still one. I'm still a comedian. You know, when I tap into that side, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, it should be there.
Give thanks, bro. This was amazing. This was
amazing. Great. Oh yeah.
And
thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to give you a few more minutes just to if you have any closing remarks, and if you have message to anybody who's gonna see this, whether they're here now or whether they're gonna watch it later.
Yes, the whole goal is to find yourself, and it's not an easy feat. I'll tell you that right now, because there's so many facets of the self, right? So many different facets of the self that needs to be explored and be integrated into the presence of what we are. And it takes a lot of work, and it's not easy. But it's doable. We can all little by little chip away at the ego until you realize that there's nothing left. And when you realize there's nothing when there's nothing left, that is what you are. So my message to everyone is I encourage everyone to seek for that, because when you reach that, your life is absolutely fulfilled. It doesn't matter what happens after that. You can be going through the worst situations, but when you know who you actually are as the no self or this self, because I'm combining the Buddhist tradition with the Hindu tradition. When you realize that you're the no self, the self, that's all that's needed. But it takes a while to get to that. So I encourage everyone to seek for that. But everyone has a different goal. Everyone has a different mission. It's different for everyone. But my mission is to encourage people to seek for that, because there's nothing more fulfilling than that. So that would be my closing statement. But there are many ways of doing this, but Energy is one of those ways that a person can do that. So if you're interested, feel free to go on to my link tree, and you can find all those links that are there. They're all there. Or you can hit me up directly if you're looking for that deal. Hit me up directly. I promise you, I'll give you one. I'll give you a really, 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 really good discount that you hopefully you're grateful for it. Just hit me up, innovativecoaching@gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram on there, and just hit me up directly, and stay in contact with me, because you're going to have other questions, and I'm there to be your guide all the way through. So if it takes you 13, 15 years to get through it, I'm there to walk you through it.
Oh, sure. Give thanks, Brother Morgan. We'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, brother. A pleasure as always.
All right. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes. You know, when we're aligned, and we're in tune, this is what happens. You know, I seen a lot of Moors in the chat. You know, they had a lot of different revelations, you know, while the presentation was going on. So it's good for them to be able to know that there's relation, you know what I mean, to the spiritual place where you're at and what you're presenting, and where they're at with the whole nationality mindset, and Drew Ali talking about this being divine, and giving us spiritual lessons, and so it was very enlightening for everybody here, and
so good to hear.
Grateful that these Moors got the opportunity to.
What's amazing about this too is when you go deeper and deeper into this, you start to understand Drew Ali. It's like, oh gosh, this is the level this guy was at. It's mind blowing. It's like, and you see people like that trying to convey that to other people, and it's amazing how they stay dedicated to that. And so I give him the full honor for being one of those people that was so dedicated to the movement that he had to find ways to express it from his standpoint, from his reality, and to enlighten other people, which is absolutely amazing and a blessing. And we give thanks to him personally.
Oh, shit. Give thanks again, bro. We'll be in touch.
You'll be in touch.
All right.
Blessings. Until next time. Peace.
For sure. Oh yeah, and yeah, we'll set up a next time because these Moors already asked when's the next one and all that. So.
Yeah, I'm up for it anytime.
Yeah, for sure. All right, bro.
All right, brother. Take
Peace.
care.
All right. That's what it's about. So stay tuned because we're gonna keep pushing the envelope. There was actually one question that I got sent. We'll just touch on that quick fast. If you could please, and then also too, let me put the link in here if anybody has anything. Don't forget, it's Wednesday, 7:30. RV Bay Publications class is going on. 655-555. Honors to all the numerologists out there. I'm going to put this question out. If anybody has anything with regard to this question, feel free to push the link and say your piece. We got about half hour. Well, 20 minutes, half hour before the session with Mother Raz and Brother Minka start up on the go-to meeting. So the question is, please give some clarity in regards to foreign nationals and why Mexicans and the rest of the 22 countries that make up North America are not foreigners and have the obligation to enforce the Constitution. Would you also address and make clear that any people from those countries should identify as Moorish Americans and not, for example, Mexican American, Cuban American, Guatemalan American, etc.? I have encountered this question from Moors before, telling me I'm Mexican American and not Moorish American. Peace and light. So one of the things in the research of Moors in America, we find out in our research that all these places, Cuba, Mexico, Paraguay, you name them, all these different countries in the Americas, things that they have there are relative to Moorish. So it's not a Cuban, whatever, it's a Moorish. It's not a Mexican, whatever, it's a Moorish, right? It's not a Bolivian, whatever, it's a Moorish. So there was an article on the brother's site, Brother Al Jameer's site, talking about the countries in South America are more closer to being Moorish American than Latin American or something like that, right? And then when we go to Noble Drew Ali, like Amar said in the chat, it lists, we'll just put that out there. When we go to the divine origin of the Asiatic nations, Noble Drew Ali made reference to the Asiatic nations and countries in North, South, and Central America, the Moorish Americans and Mexicans in North America, Brazilians, Argentinians, Chileans in South America, Colombians, Nicaraguans, and natives of San Salvador in Central America, etc. All of these are Muslims. All of these are Muslims. All of these are Moors. All of these are Moors. So anybody telling you, because you're from, Latin America, that, oh, well, you're Latin, you're Latino, or you're Mexican, or you're Puerto Rican, or whatever the case is, Right? Same way they do with us, you know, you're not Moors, you're Canadians and all that stuff. They're full of BS. North, South, Central America and the islands is all part of the Moroccan Empire. All these people are Moors. All these people are Moorish American. This is our vast estate. And you know, it's really undermining. It's really undermining for people to go to those levels, you know, where they are trying to tell you who you are, you know. And we're not talking about well, I think that I'm black, so that means we're black or whatever like that. We're not even talking about that level, right? We know without a doubt that our people have a problem with accepting facts. You know, they love accepting fictions, and once they accept and embrace the fiction, it's pretty much over for them. So just like we said, just like Brother Morgan was saying, you know, he can come out here and say honors to Noble Drew Ali and all that stuff, right? With no question, because he's checked it out to know that, you know, this individual is real. He was a spiritual master for real. And just like all the other spiritual masters, you're going to give him honors, right? Our people would have a hard time with doing that, you know, just like they have a hard time accepting the fact that North America, South America, Central America, and the adjoining islands are part of the Moroccan Empire. So if they're part of the Moroccan Empire, then these places are Morocco. And if these places are Morocco, then the people there must be descendants of Moroccans born in America. And if they're descendants of Moroccans born in America, what's their nationality? And then what's your nationality? And again, just like we were saying, if they can't accept it, don't even kill yourself, right? Don't even waste your energy. Don't even waste your time. Let them stay asleep. Because obviously that's what they want to do, sleep. Right? So we want to again give honors to the brother. You could go to his website. You can go to his website, morganosmith.blog. Everything is there. Link to the book. Some beautiful imagery, spiritual imagery. You know, lots of lessons, like lots of lessons on here. The blog list is pretty crazy because there's really a lot. And then the book, Bodhi in the Brain, an amazing read for Moorish Americans who are on their spiritual, you know, which all of us should be on our spiritual, you know, but it's an amazing read. I want to give honors to all the Moors worldwide. Honors to our prophet, our illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali, and all the work that he did for us to be where we're at. Honors to all the Moors in the chat. Don't forget, tomorrow is Third Thursday, so we'll be right here tomorrow, 7:30, for Sons of Allah, Brother Mizraim L, and myself, Cujo L. And on Friday, 5 p.m., we're going to be right here. We'll see if these Arna people show up. So we'll be right here debunking all their stuff that they got going on. They got Sun Valleys and all this, and they got mayors, and they have the true way. Moors, we don't know what we're talking about or whatever. So that's 5 p.m. on Friday. It's been a great uplifting week so far. I will all you Moors are well. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Honors to all the Moors in the chat. Honors to all the mothers worldwide. And honors to our illustrious prophet. Study, 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 and keep elevating. Thank you for being here for episode number 2 of Q&A Wednesdays. Also, remember, you can send any questions to canaanlandguide@gmail.com. Oh, somebody jumping in there. Let's just see who this is. Islam.
Hello.
Peace, peace. How's self? We can't hear you. Your phone's tripping.
Do you like
we got
guitar music?
Say that again?
Do you like guitar music?
Yeah, we like all types of music. Once it's good for the soul.
What did you think of that?
We need to get some more. We need to get some more. But
right now that's what I'm learning.
All right.
And,
well, hey.
Pretty soon I'll be joining a gospel band.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, give thanks. Appreciate you putting that energy out there. But just keep working at it. Keep working at it. Keep working at it.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you. Islam, you already know we inspire all. I don't know where that came from. But honors to all the Moors. Peace and love to all. And to all, a good night. Islam.